I love how you said, Jeff, knowing how to lead leaders.
The quicker you jump in on all that kind of stuff, you become a crutch for them not thinking for themselves. Even with major problems, you still think through potential solutions. What have you thought about so far? Why would that work? Why would this not work? Instead of just, this is what I would do.
I love how you started with culture, because a lot of times as new business owners focus on the financial part or the products and services, which is all very important. But often I see companies not focusing on being intentional with their culture.
Every single conversation starts with empathy. You do not know what that person is going through, inside work, outside work. Tell me what's going on. Help me understand where you are right now. Communication among each other, communication with the customer, communication among our vendors. If you are laser focused also on your weaknesses, that's awesome. Equally as important as whatever your strengths are.
Diverse thinking to the podcast from a generational aspect.
Change doesn't have to be overwhelming. Once you've made change, your mind knows how to make change.
At any stage of our lives, we are unstoppable.
Welcome to the Unstoppable Podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of resilient leaders, game-changing entrepreneurs, and industry innovators. I'm Michelle Bonahoom, your host and founder of Vision One High Performance Group. I'm a business strategist specializing in value growth, M&A, integration, and transition planning. In this episode, I sit down with Jeff Schuppe, owner of Schad Tracy Signs, to discuss one of the biggest transitions in his professional career, moving from corporate leadership to business ownership. I've had the privilege of knowing and working with Jeff for the past 12 to 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how he's successfully navigated this shift, embracing both the challenges and opportunities that come with it. If you've ever considered leaving the corporate world to own a business, or you're currently navigating that transition, this episode is packed with valuable lessons and real-world experiences. Join us for episode 16 as we explore Jeff's journey and discover what it truly takes to be unstoppable in business ownership. Welcome, Jeff. We're excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you just start out telling our audience about your story? And not very many people successfully can transition from corporate leadership to being a business owner. And so tell us about what led you up to that, and then what's happened since.
Yeah, I mean, through my professional career, I was in supervisory role and kind of dabbled a little bit in entrepreneurship. And then ultimately landing at a packaging company for 13 years and kind of moved up the ranks through the sales channel, and then developed marketing and into the leadership role. But about 2018, I ended up hiring a career coach. I was kind of at a stall somewhere in my journey. It was kind of the foundation of setting my mindset up for a transition that I didn't know was coming. In May of 2018, our company went through, there were some changes made, and I think ultimately the owner really kind of called me out on not performing very well for the company after being there for 13 years. And I had to get real introspective really fast and, take ultimate responsibility that obviously I was not performing very well, and I was burnt out, or, all the things that you hear people talk about relevant to being kind of wrapped up in the corporate world. But at the end of the day, I still was not performing for that company. So I had a choice, and, ultimately in talking with my wife, I ended up resigning. And then very, very quickly, within about a 2-week period, I had like 5 or 6 meetings a day of either jobs that I wanted to interview for or network with people.
So what were some of the mindset changes you had to make to go from being a business or corporate leader to being a business owner?
Every one of them kind of told me, okay, what you need to do is you need to form your team, so to speak. You got to get a stable going of people that are on your team. You need a great banker or person that is going to coach you from a loan perspective. You need a good attorney, and you need a good accountant. And then really started honing in on the type of business, and we can go into those specifics. But yeah, it was a fast and furious choice in the very beginning to make those decisions and actually make the decision to jump and go for it. I look back on that time frame as probably the biggest pivot and
Yeah.
decision of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think what's important about what you said is that you had a foundation built. So even though you didn't know the end destination, you had cultivated the mindset and the right foundation and the support resources to help you to be able to take the leap. So that's really important for those in our audience that are thinking about making a pivotal move like that, to make sure you have that right foundation and right support resources.
What you really realize when you get into a business is it can be your passion, but you have to have a heavy dose of practicality,
Mhm.
um, and that sometimes gets in the way of the passion associated with it. So probably some of the major things that I really wanted was, I wanted it to be outdated. I wanted it to be outdated in its thinking, in its culture, in its technology, in its equipment, so that I could take everything that I learned, in a bigger corporate environment and apply it to this new role. And that was probably my passion, was the modernization, component of it. There's the reality of, whoa, I have 26 families that I need to maintain their way of living, and some of them are single income people, and so I used to worry in the corporate world about my family of four and my two dogs. Now I have 26 families plus my own family, that I have to worry about. And a lot of people go into business ownership so they can pretty much immediately buy a new car or a new house, or all the glitz and the glamour and things like that. And you if you're going into business for that reason immediately, I would recommend that you just don't even attempt it, because
Mhm.
all of the things I just talked about relevant to risk are going to be very stressful for
Yeah.
you.
Jeff, kind of wrapping around that idea, when we talk about buying a business versus starting your own business, what are some of the positives and negatives between and the difference between those two?
People have said this for many years, and it is 100% true, is cash is king. Typically in a startup, you're starting it, you're using your own resources, you're developing a product or a service or an offering of some sort. Um, you still need to either not get paid, or have enough money to get paid and to deploy resources in order to build the business. You need insurance, you need all the basic things, that go along with running a business. It doesn't change when you buy a business. All of that is exactly the same. It's just that you now have potentially already have revenue coming in, so then you just have to allocate that money accordingly. You don't necessarily need to keep putting more money in if you're doing things correctly that way. So if you find a business that has consistency, and if you're a good manager per se, you usually can find the resources to at least continue it in the way that it's been going prior. So
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, because as people are thinking about making a transition like that, it is important to determine, am I wired for a startup, or am I more wired to be able to take the company to the next level? And we consult with both startups and existing companies, and I think that really is the difference. Is, with a startup, you can build the foundation from ground zero, but you're at ground zero. Whereas when you're buying a company, you're working with the culture and the people and the systems and processes that you bought. And you need, it's a different type of skill to change mindsets and culture and leaders. So talk about that. Like, when you stepped into your company, what things did you need to focus on changing? And then what were the things that you couldn't change right away?
with my criteria, being buying something that was outdated in everything, I don't think, I know, based on the foundation that you gave me, Michelle, I knew the culture was the first thing I had to work on, because I also didn't want to be operating full time always looking at my toes. I wanted a business so I could look up at the horizon a little bit. So I needed to elevate people, get people on the same page. I mean, even the basics, even the very, very basics. They had a room in their building that was like a kind of a back office that somebody would go to do private work or have private phone calls or whatever. There was a desk and chairs and whatever. They used to call that room the crying room. That was their
Mm,
joke. They called it the
wow.
crying room because it seemed as if issues would get so bad that they never talked about them or they suppressed them or whatever it may be. And eventually it led to crying. So I was like, wow, all right, we need to correct our culture to essentially have every single conversation start with empathy. You do not know what that person is going through, inside work, outside work. Tell me what's going on. Help me understand where you are right now. And that really was a pivotal move um, in kind of diffusing most situations within there. And not only that, but I think a lot of the employees were like, wow, this is a very different approach. I'm used to getting yelled at, or uh, I can't make mistakes and I'm not comfortable making mistakes. And I have to ask 50 questions, which is inefficient because I don't want to make a mistake. So
You say leading with empathy. What else would you do to create that culture and make your team work with your vision and everything?
again, just the basics. We scheduled weekly meetings for every one of the managers. So I would meet individual one-on-ones. We would have production meetings in front of all the employees. We had install meetings with all the installers. We had sales meetings to go over sales. None of that was in place at all. It was just a very reactionary environment, and turning
Yeah.
that into a proactive communication among each other, communication with the customer, communication among our vendors. I mean, that's the key to all of the basics. And again, that component of, you can get mad. That's perfectly fine if something goes wrong. But the very first question you ask has to be an empathetic
Yeah.
approach to the
Yeah.
questioning,
Yeah.
because it immediately diffuses whatever's going to come
Yeah.
after it.
That's awesome. I love how you started with culture because a lot of times as new business owners would tend to focus on the financial part or the products and services, which is all very important. But often I see companies not focusing on being intentional with their culture. And it sounds like your intentionality with your culture is really what made the shifts that were needed to get to the next level. So for the audience out there that is thinking about making a transition from corporate type leadership role to being a business owner, what would be the top 3 or 4 steps that they need to take to get started?
First and foremost, every conversation that you have with any current business owner is free. I mean,
Mhm.
kind of. You have to buy coffee or you have to buy lunch or you have to buy a beer. But
Yeah.
you don't have to go talk to a bank and get all your financing lined up. You don't have to
Mhm.
talk to an attorney, hey, write me up anything and pay them to do that. You don't have to talk, you just don't. I mean, having basic conversations about types of businesses, even hone in on a group of businesses that you like, and then just reach out to the owners and just say, I want to talk. That's a big major step in that direction. Then social media is everything. You can really dive into an industry anywhere on social media. So
Mhm.
if you have a
Mhm.
consumer product, jump into TikTok and Instagram and just start searching around and finding those products and see how people are advertising, and see the competition that's out there. If you're regional, if you're local, if you're national,
Mhm.
you can get all that on there. If you're
Yeah.
going B2B, jump on LinkedIn and surf around and try to figure out um, all of those types of things. And it's not even dreaming at that point. It's more practicality surrounding a vision that you potentially have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any other steps that you'd recommend taking?
Truly understanding your finance options. So if you're typically a business is like a house. If you're going to get traditional financing, you need 20% down. But if you go through the SBA, you could get 10% down. I would highly recommend going through a small regional bank,
Mhm.
as opposed to a very large bank, just because they're people and they don't, you can actually talk to people. Um, and they'll help you kind of navigate through that process. So you can start wrapping your head around the size of business that you could potentially purchase. And then from the size of business, based on the financing you can get, you can see if the loan will fit inside of that business, if you can take a salary from day
Mhm.
one, if you have money left over
Right.
that you can use for modernization. You can start laying out that path.
You bring up a good point because it's develop a playbook, right? So develop that foundational set of, vision and strategies and your mission and why, but then also like what's the strategy going to be around going and trying to acquire a business. That's so important. We work with a lot of companies to help them build their playbooks, and most don't have them, even exist, like companies that have been around for a long time.
I think it was one of my mentors that actually said, well, you just need to put it on paper, what you're looking for, because if you're going to be meeting with all these business brokers, they're going to say, okay, I'm going to throw you a coffee shop and a vape company and somebody that sells to government agencies, and anything and everything in between. So if you don't like that, you should put into your criteria, I do not want this type of business. Don't even
Yeah.
send it to me. I'm not even
Yeah.
going to look. But all of these over here within this certain dollar amount, then send me these and I'll take a look at it, type of thing. It's no
Yep.
different than buying a house. I mean, really, if you put your mindset on, I want this type of neighborhood, I want this many
Yep.
bedrooms, I want, whatever it is, you really just hone in on that criteria. And obviously it can change as you start looking at businesses, but it's a pretty key component.
The other thing that you mentioned earlier that I think is really important as a step is to really know the value you add, because so I see, we come alongside of businesses and help them buy and sell all the time. And I often see companies overpaying because they're not leveraging the value they can provide, or they're paying for value they don't need. And so I think that sounds like something that you really focused on, is you really saw where is that synergistic value that you could bring to the company that would allow you to actually probably target companies that some private equity groups or other competitors wouldn't target because it didn't have everything polished up.
If you are laser focused also on your weaknesses, as you are talking with companies, you can ask, like mine
Yeah.
particular, I was not in the accounting, bookkeeping. I didn't want to buy a business that was not strong in that area, and that was in the criteria.
Yeah.
That's
Awesome.
equally as important as whatever your strengths are.
Yeah. Well, that brings me into the kind of the next question is around what skills are really important for a business owner that maybe weren't necessarily as important for as a corporate leader, and then what are the specific support resources that a new business owner should surround themselves with?
I mean, and all businesses are different. In manufacturing, there's so many moving parts. We have assets with equipment, with trucks, with physical buildings, with people, with materials, all of those aspects. But if you're running a service-based business where it's mainly surrounding people, you probably should have really good leadership skills, right? You definitely need to be able to understand not only how to lead direct employees, meaning, maybe hourly employees, but you should also know how to lead leaders as well. The better skills that you have at that, the quicker you can build your way. If your goal is to be out of operations,
Hmm.
the quicker you can move in that direction, because if you find potential in um, some of the hourly employees, or you're really good at hiring and you know that you can kind of build yourself out of a lot of those operational roles, those are really key things. And I think you have to have a heavy dose of humility as a business owner. If you think you know it all, or you think you're better than a lot of people, you probably should not own a business, because it's every day you are humbled by either something that goes amazingly well, and you're like, whoa, this person really took the ball and ran with it and completely exceeded my expectations. I mean, that's amazing, and it makes you feel so good. Or we've been training for this for 3 years, and now it happened, and look at how bad we dropped the ball. And going back to your leaders and not exploding on them, leading with empathy and saying, man, how could we do this differently? Clearly it did not work in all of our preparation.
Yeah.
We have to be better as a team. So
I love how you said, Jeff, knowing how to lead leaders. What are some of the ways that you do to lead leaders?
there's a guy, my first job out of college, I worked for Kodak. Before digital, people would take these little canisters of film, put them into an envelope at Target or Walgreens, and miraculously the next day it would show up with actual photos
Yeah.
in the envelope. And there was one day where I came into my general manager's office, and he's sitting at his desk, and he's just drinking a cup of coffee. How was last night? And I was hot. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong did. And I am just telling him, this person didn't do that. This person didn't do that. This machine blew up and this person didn't care about it. Maintenance, blah, 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 blah. Just this big
Yeah.
mushroom cloud of explosion on this guy. Well, about halfway through me talking, he stopped looking at me and just started looking at his computer. And every now and then would like look at me in like a disgusting face, like, are you still going? Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
look away. I'm going to look away. Well, eventually I stopped and I'm like, did you hear anything that I said? He goes, you need to go home right now and never coming back into my office ever again until you have a solution for every single one of those problems you just dumped on my lap. And I mean, I was like, what?
Wow.
I'm like, I am exhausted, and this is the worst scenario I have ever been in. I'm out. And I mean, I left that building that day and I was going to quit. I mean, I was so frustrated, but I was on my weekend, so I had 3 days off. And from that point on, I never entered his office until I at least had a solution to the
Yeah.
problem that I
Wow.
was complaining about. And I mean, that set me on a good pace. And the quicker you jump in on all that kind of stuff, you become a crutch a lot of times for them not thinking for themselves.
Where's the balance, Jeff, would you say, between being able to solve a problem yourself and also too asking for help, asking your leaders like, "Hey, I'm stuck. I do need some help." Where's kind of like the middle ground there in your opinion?
Even with major problems, you still think through potential solutions, but they will probably lead with, um, I have one here and I have thought of potential solutions, but I just can't nail it
Yeah.
down. And
Yeah.
I'm all in on those. I mean,
Yeah.
then it's a matter of, what have you thought about so far? Why would that work? Why would this not work? Have you talked to anybody else about this? What do they have to say? Have you tried this before? Have you, really still digging to try to get them to solve the problem using what ifs and, uh, have you thought ofs instead of just always giving them, this is what I would do. I also try to still drag out the best possible scenarios to keep the line of training going relevant to developing them to think for themselves.
Awesome. Thank you. Wow. It's been, there's so many things I'm taking away from this, but I think the big things would be number one, don't wait to take the leap. It sounds like you took the leap, but have some foundational planning before that. But I love how and maybe I'm biased about this, but I love how you focused on culture and really changing the culture. And that's probably what sets you up for success and the ability to really grow. So, very good advice. How can people reach you?
Our company are all over socials. Schadtracy.com is our website. My email is jschuppe@schadtracy.com. Yeah, or LinkedIn. Send me a message on LinkedIn if you want to talk shop, if you're considering
Awesome.
purchasing a business, or if you want to do business.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing what your next season looks like.
Me too. Yes. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Unstoppable. If you found this episode valuable, please like, subscribe, and share. At Vision One, we help business owners and leaders navigate critical transitions. Whether you're growing, buying, or selling, or transitioning to the next generation, if you're feeling stuck or need extra support, visit us at visiononeperformance.com to learn how we can help. And don't forget to check out our book, Unstoppable: 7 Simple Steps to Get Unstuck, Make the Big Change, and Unlock Your Potential. It's free on Audible, so you can find the link on our website. Remember, the only limits are the ones you set. Stay unstoppable, and we'll see you next time.